Hello again, Toy here. This is the follow-up to the tri-symbol deck video. This is going to be the profile that I was talking about. Today we're going to be covering a tri-symbol Splash Woman deck. I know, Splash Woman. Arguably one of the worst, if not the worst, UVS character in the game right now. I got requested to cover this character as a tri-symbol deck, and it's kind of funny how she works, so we'll just get into it, and then I can explain a lot of things on how I went about building it, and why they're in there, and so on, so on, so on. So let's get to it. So this is our Splash Woman deck. If you don't know what Splash Woman does, she is a death, life, water character, 8 hand size, not really. 8 hand size, 18 vitality. At the start of every combat phase, you lose vitality. So each combat phase, yours and your opponent's. It's awful. And you can only play 4 cards from your hand each turn. However, you can discard 2 cards to gain 2 vitality. So that lets us run more copies of stuff than we probably should, and lets us do some other things. So we're going to try our best to mitigate her problems and maximize on her benefits. Okay, so her benefits are she gets to see 8 cards, so we want to maximize that. How we're going to take advantage of that. We have to mitigate the fact that she just dies constantly by existing. And we're going to try to get rid of the fact that she can only play 4 cards each turn. So the primary combo that you play with Splash Woman is you run Resurrected Revenant, which says commit to seal your character, add 1 foundation from your discard pile to your hand. So we're primarily running this so that we can seal her, so we can play more than 4 cards per turn, and hopefully actually play a normal game of universes. That's kind of our whole goal here. So the objective of this deck, and the reason why I chose to try Symbol Splash Woman beyond because it was requested, is we want to have access to Resurrected Revenant on water, because that is what makes her function, but we also want to be able to run the Spirit Shotgun, Vengeance of the Fallen Angel, Spiritual Shooting Ring combo. Okay, so if you don't know what that combo is, Spiritual Shooting Ring shares both water and life with our character. We can commit and flip it to clog our opponent's card pool, which is very helpful to keep us alive, or we can remove it to double the ranged attack's damage, which is pretty big when you're running Shotgun, or if you're running Vengeance of the Fallen Angel, where you can already give it +6 damage and then double it to 24. Okay, this is not the greatest combination because it doesn't have a solid delivery plan outside of Shotgun pretending that it's a throw, but it's going to let us get some damage in there if we're lucky. Basically, this whole deck is just trying to stay alive as long as we can and then trying to kill them with these big, dumb ranged attacks. And everything else is sort of just to support that concept. Spirit Shotgun is going to get more damage based off every printed resource symbol that share with our main character, which in a deck like this where we have a lot of cards that share 3 symbols or a lot of cards that share dual symbol, it should get some pretty good pump off it. So that will be the primary kill plan. We do have some backup options, some other things here, but I'll talk about the structure very quickly here. So as you can see, this is the same circle as last time, only I've gone to the liberty of assigning the symbols now to each side so you can see how the spread goes. Okay, so now this is very beneficial because it lets you see kind of how the attack spreads are laid out. So now if you've noticed, everything in these categories on all the life symbols is where my attacks are living, that you can see, right? And then you see up here I have some defensive control pieces. Well, Toguro Bros you can use offensively. Okay, so then you'll notice that I can use Toguro Bros anytime I use these attacks over up here, right? Because that's the death section. So if we're trying to do Falling Heel Strike to unflip stuff, we can still then try to bait out foundations or assets with Toguro Bros with it, so we can do that kind of stuff. Additionally, we can do block reversals with Laser Trident, and then hopefully have the ability to Toguro Bros as well. The only time that won't work is if we're trying to block with the Templar and we go into a Laser Trident. We won't be able to do that. But you can see how the symbol distribution is going to help us identify where the game flow goes. As you can see now as well, that on the water side over here on the right, that's where all of our foundations and all of our assets live. And the only thing that death is handling on its own is it has mono actions. Same thing with life. Life also handles mono actions. So yeah, so that just helps you kind of see visually the distribution of where things are. So we're using death for utility, we're using water for our build, and we're using life for our offensive stuff. and then defense is kind of split between both death and life, so depending on what we need. Cool. So that's the distribution. That's where all the symbols are. And now let's get into some of the choices and why things are there. So Toguro Bros needs no explanation. This is a very technical piece. It lets us control our opponent's side of the board. Even just having it can sometimes intimidate and affect our opponent's decisions. It is a very great card. We're running one copy of Deliverance because Splash Woman is squishy as heck. So it is very good to have that one of clutch damage reduction in your hand. Deliverance is a card where it's very risky to mainboard more than one copy because as soon as your opponent sees it, they'll be able to play around it. So if they see the single copy fall into your discard pile, then they may play around a second copy that doesn't even exist. So the first Deliverance is still affecting our opponent. Whereas if they don't see it and you get to play it on them, then they get to walk into it unprepared. So I'm a big advocate of only having one Deliverance in a deck. It has some interesting benefits that way. We talked about Shotgun, what this thing does. It's going to help us build momentum. It's going to help us kill our opponents. It does all the great things. We can throw big shotguns at people if we get them at the end of chains. We can throw them at the beginning if we need to get chip damage in. And it's a breaker block. It's just a great card. It's a deadlock threat. It does all sorts of great things. We're going to come down here. Templar, we need to gain vitality being Splash Woman, right? We just die by existing, so Templar is going to help us mitigate that problem. It's also going to get us to draw more cards, which means we can then hopefully discard them into her gaining more vitality if we are unable to block. So depending on how that interaction is going during our opponent's turn, we can just try to gain as much vitality as we can by blocking and doing that sort of thing. We are running 2 copies of Revoke because Revoke is amazing. It is both defensive, offensive. We will not be able to take advantage of the first form, which is why we're only running 2 copies of Revoke versus 3 copies of Toguro Bros. Because this thing's only going to be playable during an attack sequence, whereas this thing is playable anytime an asset or foundation is used. Cool. All right, let's get into the tri-symbol stuff. We talked about Vengeance of the Fallen Angel. We're just using this to get big damage numbers out there. It's also got a decent block on it. We're running Falling Heel Strike to unflip foundations. Namely, one of our big ones is going to be Toughest Punk in Junior High in order to get more damage reduction to keep ourselves alive. But alternatively, if we only see one Spiritual Ring, we can commit and flip it to clog our opponent's card pool, and then on our turn, we can unflip it using Falling Heel Strike. So that's something very important to remember. So during our opponent's turn, we can commit and flip this card to clog our opponent. We untap it during our turn. Then we can open up with a Falling Heel Strike, which then unflips it, making it an asset again that we can then remove for our Vengeance and or our Shotguns. Okay, so there's also that interaction there. We're running Laser Trident, which we're only running 2 copies, but it also falls back into the same kind of strategy that we're doing with Spiritual Shooting Ring, where we get to clog our opponent's card pool and hoping that we get to stay alive for another turn. So after we play this card as a reversal, add the top card of their deck to their card pool face down. We're just trying to slow them down. The plus speed is just beneficial if we manage to get it, and if we manage to land an attack with, or if we manage to land this thing as an attack, that's just gravy on top. But we're mostly running this as a defensive piece to stop our opponent from playing many attacks against us, because if we are in a situation where they can control or they manage to destroy our Resurrected Revenant and we can only play a maximum of 4 cards as blocks, that means we can just die if they are able to play more than 4 attacks. So having alternative strategies to stay alive beyond blocking is very important for Splash Women. So that's why we have Laser Trident, that's why we're running Spiritual Shooting Ring, that's why we have Toughest Punk in Junior High, in order to artificially increase our vitality and to make our opponent's job far more difficult. We have Red Dragon Assassin because we would love to be able to choose and destroy our opponent's foundations beyond what we can control with Toguro Bros. We have Sing for Me, which lets us discard our extra momentum to, again, gain vitality, draw more cards. So Shotgun's going to help us gain momentum, Forbidden Moonset's going to help us gain momentum, and hopefully Divine Justice is going to help us gain momentum, and then I'll talk about this when we get to it. Lastly, we have 1 copy of Generous Gambler, where we can smoke one of our face downs for plus or minus speed. It doesn't have the greatest numbers, but we're trying to take advantage of that speed increase in reduction in case we do have the ability to block things. We're gonna go for it. Expert Swimmer, commit and flip after your opponent plays an ability that gains them vitality. We get to cancel it and gain more vitality ourselves. It's a spam. It helps us gain vitality in clutch moments, and it shares all 3 symbols with our character, so we can play it at the end of any string that we managed to push out. Alrighty, so now moving on to the Death Water cards. We're running 2 copies of Ridding the World of Outsiders. This is Pump. That's all those things in here for. This thing's very beneficial for reversals. You can enhance on it during our opponent's attacks, and then we can play our reversal, which is our laser trident, and then we can get the +2/+2 on that. We're running 2 copies of a new master. We can commit to add one of our opponent's momentums to their card pool. Again, if their opponent has momentum and we can reversal with laser trident, we can clog their card pool even further. Additionally, we can just destroy it to add one of their momentum to their card pool. Again, just reinforcing that card pool clogging strategy we're going for. Murderous Addiction, destroy to add an asset into their momentum that we can play while committed. Again, very important. And additionally, if our opponent has any momentum, we can reduce damage to 0 as a first enhance. Again, we're trying to go for damage reduction. We're trying to combine that with New Master. We're just controlling as much of what our opponent's doing as we can using Splash Woman and keeping things in line with our overall deck plan. We're running 1 copy of Verdant Slaughter. This thing's just very helpful for shutting down card pool loops, or if they have something that you can't get control of with hand cannon, depending on where you do. It's kind of like an in-stage version of hand cannon for some things. So that it's very important for that. And then additionally, it's very good as just a deadlock threat on board, just to give +2/+2 pumps on your EX and powerful attacks. We're running 1 copy of Celestial Being. Celestial Being, if we have surplus momentum, we can pump our reversals for +3/+3. Also, we can flip it in order to prevent our opponent from shutting down specific foundations if they have target committal, or if they just have monstrous stun, we can take care of that. We're running 2 copies of Active Treason. We're only running about 5 reversals in this deck, but this just, again, lets us have more control over our opponent's staging area. We are running Jolly Gloomy at 4 copies. We're basically just using this for momentum control for our opponent, and it's a great spam. So we never want our opponent going off on our faces with big multiples, or getting to smush our tiny little vitality with giant powerful attacks. We're just trying to make sure that they stay off momentum, just in case whatever crazy tricks they're doing, we just don't want them to do that. So this is kind of our control package up here. Moving over to Mono Water, we've talked about Resurrected Revenant. We want to seal our character. It helps us tutor the foundations we need to control the board. And then it's going to let us play more than 4 cards in 1 turn, which is very important. We're running 1 copy of however you pronounce this. Because you're playing Splash Woman, you're legally obligated to play the R flip after you play an attack to taunt it before you kill them. You are required to do that before killing someone with this deck. We're running 4 copies of Sweet Nothings. Again, we're running a decent amount of momentum generation cards. This is just, again, going to help us stay alive. We don't care if our opponent draws cards or gains vitality, because we need to stay alive. We are assuming that throwing our big, cinder block attacks at people is going to kill them, hopefully, somehow. Sweet Nothing's just going to buy us more time again to help us get that strategy through. And we talked about Toughest Punk again, helping us have an artificial vitality increase. The water package is primarily survival over here with our key piece to our deck's function, Resurrected Revenant. Okay, and then moving down, last but not least, our life and water cards. We're going to go through a Malfestation. So I want to talk again about us trying to stop our opponent from attacking us more so than keeping ourselves functional. So Malfestation makes it so that their stun also stuns our opponent, which is going to prevent them from being able to continue attacking us. So we're just trying to restrict our opponent's resources and stop them from being able to just push into us and kill us. And this card helps with that significantly. We talked about Spiritual Shooting Ring. It's for our damage pump. It's for clog. Rhythmic Fighting Style is going to help us not die to throws and or shotguns or whatever else. It's just going to help us remove specific attacks that are going to be a problem for us or that are going to get chip damage through. We're running 2 copies of Last of the Ling Sheng Su Commit to Gain of Vitality, which is, again, going back to us just not dying for existing, because that's important. And then we can destroy it for +3 damage on our safe attacks. We're running 1 copies of A Sun's Love in order to remove safe, or if we just need card draw, and then your opponent to gain momentum so that we can clog them with New Master. So it's a tricky little bait that way. Deliverance, because it's a fantastic card. After your opponent plays an enhance on a foundation, just kill it. We're running 3 copies of Dirty Bow for a strong low block breaker, and we can destroy foundations to help push attacks through. We're running Divine Justice, so this card's very interesting in the Grim DLC. It is a breaker block, but primarily we can run it as a reversal to go with our reversal strategies. And when it's in our card pool, whenever we discard one or more momentum, we will gain vitality. So this thing's very cool in the fact that we can block with it, and then we can proc the Sweet Nothings on our opponent, and then we will also gain vitality off of discarding the momentum for Sweet Nothings on top of getting rid of their attack. So this card's very interesting that way. We can also block reversal with this. We can discard momentum either on itself. We can discard momentum with Celestial Being that way. There's just a few tricks that we can do with this card in order to help us gain momentum if we're lucky, and in order for us to gain vitality off of it. So it's a very interesting card. It helps us stay alive, and it helps us stay in the game longer. 3 copies of Hand Cannon. This card, again, is a meta staple. It prevents so many nasty tricks from going off and card pool clearing. So anytime that our opponent's able to clear their own card pool and continue attacking us, this card's going to shut that off and make sure that they play a fair game of universes. And then we're running 3 copies of Forbidden Moonset. This is another alternative kill condition. We can just pump this thing for massive damage, or we can add one of our opponent's foundations to their hand. So we have control over our opponent's staging area. We can snipe out pieces we don't want. And then if we have 6 or fewer foundations, so if we play this early, we can use it to gain momentum. So that is the Splash Woman deck. Is it good? Not necessarily. Can it kill people? Definitely. This is one of those kind of decks where if our opponent ever disrespects it in any way, or if they think it's a joke, you can just possibly one-shot a 7-hander with a Fallen Angel, or you can easily just push massive shotguns at them, or just dismantle their staging area and punish them for it. This deck, could I recommend playing it? Probably not. The point of this deck is for me to show you what you can do with tri-symboling. Namely, you're connecting pieces of 2 different symbols that would not be able to connect otherwise, and then taking advantage of some key technical pieces from other symbols. So the key technical pieces we're covering are Toguro Bros and Deliverance. And then the pieces that we're trying to join together is we're trying to do the Spirit Shotgun, Fallen Angel, Spiritual Shooting Ring combination, whilst still using Resurrected Revenant on our Splash Woman. Okay, so by joining all those pieces together, we can get a deck that can do some pretty interesting things that it would not be able to do on any of these symbols by itself. And that's the ultimate goal whenever you're trying to do a deck like this. You're trying to find things that you would not be able to accomplish otherwise, and then it's up to you to decide whether or not those effects or those benefits are worth it. So it's a process, and it's a thing that you have to go through and you have to experiment with. And the more often you do this, or you do this kind of an exercise, you'll get more familiar with kind of the unique nature or properties that symbols have, and then you can start to better understand what's possible by combining them. There are 12 different symbols in universes right now, and there's so many different combinations that you can do. It's so many interesting things by mixing them together and not restricting yourself to just one symbol at a time. So I hope that you learned something out of this whole multi-symbol process. I may touch on this a little bit more down the road, but for now I'm going to set multi-symboling down for a bit and talk about a few other things. So if you did get something out of this, please hit that like button. It helps us out a lot. Thank you so much for listening to this whole process and wanting to look at a Splash Woman deck profile. Until next time, my name's Toy. Bye.